Hello, people who are watching for whatever reason you're watching. This is the pilot episode of a podcast that we are starting. We are calling it Spitball. It's there, so it's above us. Whoa, look at that. That's like professional and everything. We decided on the name Spitball because we have the balls to spit on you. Is that what we went with? No,
Yeah, pretty
okay.
much, pretty much.
No, we based it around kind of spitball discussions that we'll sort of have between Sam and I. I'm Harrison. He's Sam. He's Sam.
Oh,
Samwise Gamgee. Though he can't carry the ring, he can carry
no.
you, Mr. Frodo. So, yeah, we often have a lot of discussions between ourselves about movies and TV shows
And life and the mysteries
and
of.
life, but we're not going to talk about that on a podcast. At least not today.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we just sort of figured, like, some people might want to listen to our banter. Our banter, because we're pretentious assholes that way. So I guess we'll actually get to introducing ourselves properly. I'm Harrison. I
I'm Sam. Oh,
Yep.
sorry.
Yep.
Sorry.
Okay.
You.
Well, tell me about yourself, Sam. What do you like? What's your favorite dog name? Something of the sort.
Favorite dog name?
Yeah, favorite dog name. Just random discussion topics.
I suppose Oscar, since it's
Yeah,
my
yeah.
dog.
Not Harry.
Uh, Harry's a bit
It's
difficult,
too
but
close to Harrison. Too close to Harrison. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. Talk about yourself in relation to the podcast, Sam. So why is this interesting to you? Why is this something you
um,
do?
I've always liked podcasts, I guess. And so I just thought, why not do our own? And here we are. But yeah.
How
Also, I
about
find that often when me and Harrison talk about movies just in general, I don't want to say we get an audience because it's usually only like one or two people kind of listen in as well. So we thought, who knows?
yeah.
Maybe there's more people like that, but
Yeah, I've always been sort of interested in like films and TV shows, and find I can go on like very long-winded discussions about them, and it's one of those things. Like I always like podcasts as well. I kind of like having people just talking, even if I'm not actually listening to it fully. I kind of gauge some of it in the background, and like can understand that other people would as well. And like with my opinions on like movies and stuff, I often end up describing like the same opinions constantly to all these different people. So it might be nice to just be like, oh, just go to this is Spitball podcast, right, guys? Yes. And like
yeah.
advertising, like big billboard, like I'm not gonna tell you myself. Fuck you. Watch my shit.
Spitball, the movie,
Yeah, Spitball the movie.
which we'll then talk about for an
Yeah,
hour.
in 4D, you actually get spit on. Whoa. It's Disney theme park ride.
Yeah. But yeah.
Okay, so
I had nothing. I had nothing. But
nothing. Okay, we'll get on to actually what we're going to talk about today. We haven't really figured like a proper format for the podcast, and we're just sort of spitballing it, panda, for the pilot episode here, and just two films that we have both seen recently, but actually haven't discussed between each other. We have seen Interstellar by Christopher Nolan. You may know him from like directing like Batman and Inception and other films that were like indie films. No one really knew about them. Like
yeah,
they kind of showed up at local
under the radar a
theaters.
little bit.
Yeah, off the radar. I mean, like no one quotes them in like deep raspy voices or anything. That movie is also starring Matthew McConaughey, Michael Caine, Anne Hathaway, Jessica Chastain, and like other notable people. It's a pretty big blockbuster cinematic hit. We'll
Yes.
also be talking about Nightcrawler, which is directed by Dan Gilroy. He was involved with writing Born Legacy, which is is it Jeremy Renner? God, it's
I think so.
not the
But
Matt
you're
Damon
forgetting,
one.
you're forgetting that critically and acclaimed Oscar-winning film, Real Steel.
Yes, I was about to bring that one up as well. Starring
No.
Wolverine, the great actor Wolverine, last name Wolverine. Yeah, but Nightcrawler starring Jake Gyllenhaal, who I believe that he's notable from Source Code. I quite like that movie, but then like several other like
Yeah, like a certain mountain.
Yeah,
you know.
a certain mountain. He broke his back, something like that. Like
he
had to like
Heath Ledger
something.
gave him
Yeah.
some sort of
Something broke his back, something like that. Yeah.
in order to get his back fixed, he discovered all sorts of crevices he never knew about.
Oh, yeah, well, you want to tell me about that? Because I haven't seen the movie, because I don't go on those kind of like sites. But I know you do, so like, well,
It's as much as it was a good movie, but I'm not gonna lie, it's not the most comfortable thing to be watching either. But
no.
anyway, we're not talking about Brokeback Mountain. We're talking about Interstellar. So
Yes, okay. Well, I'll get a little.
probably spend about, I'd say. Oh, hello.
Look at that. She is getting spitballed all on her face. That is.
My face is right where Matthew McConaughey's crotch should be. But
Yep. Or his crotch is right where your face should be. Is more like, right. Yep. Brokeback Mountain.
But
yeah.
Oh yeah. So we're probably gonna spend about 5 minutes here discussing
Sort of summarizing the film, giving like recommendations. Like we'll start off like spoiler free.
Yeah.
And we'll just do a few minutes saying like what we can compare it to in movies, the kind of setting, so you can know if you'll like it or not. And then we'll move on to actually like talking about it quite in depth. And our actual discussion about it is more intended as like an afterthought kind of reflection on the movie. So for people who have actually seen it, so I'll just, if this is the YouTube version, I'll just put like an annotation somewhere you can click afterwards, and we'll let you know before we move on to actual like spoiler territory. But yeah,
because obviously there's been delays in making this first podcast, so it's been out for almost a month. So if you haven't seen it yet, you probably haven't. You probably
aren't going to. You mean?
But the thing is, just for usually this part of the podcast will be more the when we review newer films as they come out, it'll be more of a review, I should say, because this isn't a review video or podcast. It's a reflection, discussion, whatever. And I didn't mean to sound like I was correcting you there, even though like.
Whoa,
no, but
Nazi. Whoa, what's this? Oh my goodness.
But so yeah, it's mostly going to be ruminating about the film, other than the first 5 minutes, which So let's dive right in. Essentially, the plot of the movie, in most broadest terms, is it's in the distant. It didn't really say how distant, but
no, if you can imagine like one generation in the future.
Like I'd imagine. Maybe like Matthew McConaughey's character would be probably like our children's age, but and for since there's so many people on the earth, which food supplies are running short, and we need to find a new home for humanity, and who else to do that but old Matthew McConaughey?
All right.
So we can't really say much more without getting into spoilers. So, what do you think of Interstellar?
Okay. Well, before we actually move on to like all that, I'm just gonna say I saw Interstellar without actually knowing anything about it going in, except that it was called Interstellar. I didn't know that it was a Christopher Nolan movie until Michael Caine showed up, and I'm like, oh, I know who directed this. I did.
Seriously, you had no clue?
No, I honestly didn't. I've been quite out of the loop on movies, and I just kind of got dragged along by some friends.
I'm the opposite end of the spectrum. I've been following
waiting for it to come out for a while. Okay, I was
since it was announced. I remember thinking after Dark Knight Rises, like what kind of movie I'd want to see Nolan do next. I remember science fiction was really number one, I'd probably say there. And so when I heard he was actually making, it's not really science fiction as much as it's in terms of like a Star Trek, Star Wars sort of thing. Obviously, because it's
like I don't know, like I would call it science fiction. It's just that thing where like Star Wars and Star Trek are more along the lines of like science fantasy. Yeah. But they kind of get given the name science fiction, whereas this is it's just fiction about science. Like
they
don't really make too much stuff up, and we'll get to that later. But I'll just finish with what I was saying, where it's like I saw this movie without actually knowing anything, not even knowing the movie's length. So I didn't know when we were like in the middle or the end, because it is quite a long movie. So it's what is it, 169 minutes? I think I
it was down somewhere. It was a good, like, I don't know, I haven't seen it.
2.5 hours. 2.5 hours, like, if you take out credits. So yeah, it's a Return of the King.
Although to the film's credit, it didn't feel that long for me.
Yeah.
I remember there was bits towards the middle of the movie, which I now know is the middle of the movie, where it looked like it was starting to maybe wrap up, and I remember, and I started to think, no, I want to see more, which, if that's not a compliment to the movie, then,
But yeah, I'd probably recommend seeing this movie without actually knowing much more than we've told you here already. That's kind of like something to do with space, people are dying, have fun for 3 hours.
Say, like I said, say anything else would probably
spoil it in some way. Yeah, I would believe that really knowing anything about the movie would spoil it. But maybe know the runtime link, so you know what you're getting into.
Yeah. You might want to take a bathroom break before getting in.
Yeah.
Because I will say, the last hour of the movie, I was shuffling and jiving and, Yeah.
Well, we'll specifically say now that we're moving on to spoiler territory, so that we can get onto our actual discussion of it.
Matt Damon!
Oh, spoiler alert.
Matt Damon's also in the movie, which...
That's spoiler. But I'll have an annotation on the screen probably for like the last 30 seconds or something if you want to move on to just our like recommendation or like summary of Nightcrawler, which we'll move on to talking after we finish talking about Interstellar. I don't know how long that's going to be. We have no format yet. Okay, so
yeah, crap. I might want to edit that out a bit. Anyway.
It's not a spoiler, but sure. All right.
Yeah.
Matt Damon. If that's where you want to start, go ahead.
That's one thing which I remember as I was following the movie, like when they announced who was in it, all that sort of stuff. I had zero clue. That was as big a shock to me as it would have been to you that Matt Damon was. Because, the thing is, I was expecting him to be Chinese because when Michael Caine was saying, and this is the great Mr. Man, he was the greatest of us all. I thought he said Mr. Mao, like Mao Zedong. So I was expecting a Chinese dude to be in there.
So whoa, Matt Damon's Chinese this whole time. That's the biggest like spoiler and plot twist that we'll ever have.
Yeah, which even I'm not gonna lie, that seemed a little bit like it was written by like a first year film student. The fact that the greatest of us, Mr. Man, and yet he was the most flawed kind of evil character.
Whoa! Oh my God, we're getting real deep here, Sam.
That's one of the only times where I thought, that was written.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like I'll talk about Matt Damon a little bit. I feel like with the English teacher I had throughout high school, she quite enjoyed Matt Damon, like a little too much. So we pretty much watched a Matt Damon film.
She was.
Like every
Not Matt Damon, the teacher.
No, Matt Damon is a lovely teacher. I loved her. She was my favorite English teacher, Matt Damon. But yeah, I kind of got to the point where like watching so many movies, like seeing him in like School Ties and Born Identity and all that stuff, where he's like around 20 and stuff. So it was like a pretty big shock for me, honestly, to see him like show up in the movie because, like, spoiler alert, he is no longer 20 years old. Like,
yeah,
like he's not a hugely old man, but he's grown a little. And I remember being like,
how old would he be? He'd probably be early 40s by now.
Yeah, something like that. But it's like he looks shockingly different. When he showed up, I'm like, whoa, those are some nice prosthetics to make him look. Oh wait, he is old. Oh.
Although, but like what? Like if you think Matt Damon, what's the first movie you think of?
Probably Born Identity.
Right, for me it'd be Good Will Hunting, but which was which that's.
No, I think of the talented Mr. Ripley, I think, and Jude Law.
Tommy. Oh man.
So back to the actual Interstellar.
Back to Sorry for that weird little tangent.
Yep. Okay, we might want to like start like moving from the start of the movie to the end from our memory and sort of pick up things that we kind of think about. So like one of the things that starts off with the movie, like if you've seen it, you'll know, is there's the whole like humanity is struggling to survive. A lot of people are dead. And there's the whole
Like-
blight thing. Like, blight is
Yes.
a very big thing to talk about.
Which, also in this world, you also have, like, I don't know why I'm describing this. If someone's past this point, they've probably seen the movie.
Yeah, just start talking about it.
But I was gonna say, it's how you have, how, I don't know, it's sort of really interesting how, since in this, future, since food's going down, they need as much, farmers and agricultural work as you can. So, they're saying that they, I don't know where I'm going, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'll keep talking about blight. Because one thing that's really interesting about what the movie does with this is it just kind of goes, blight, it is killing our food. We can no longer have, like, wheat, and then you see in, like, NASA's studies that they can no longer grow, like, that corn is starting to get attacked by it. And that's the thing that you see throughout the start of the movie, that everyone's already farming. And
Is blight, sorry, is that like the sandstorms and stuff?
Sort of, like, that's not explained, and that's another thing I'm getting into, where the movie kind of just, like, it kind of doesn't like drown you in exposition about that stuff. And, like, you could consider that being like, oh, they're just, like, being like, oh, this is the reason Earth is dying and don't explain it. But it's also quite clever, because the way I found it is, it makes the characters more believable, because, you don't have people who have been in that situation for, like, 20 years walking up to each other like, man, this blight that came from this, like, human waste products over the years and then built up to a point where it's like this organic compound that's slowly killing us.
I remember 20 years ago when I was 12 years old and it started.
Yeah.
Boy.
Like, the movie kind of shows you, at least, like, from what I found, like, I was very interested in blight. And, like, so I was looking and it's just like, okay, they explained that it breathes nitrogen, so, like, it breathes more of our air than we do, and so that essentially that will cause it to outlive us, and we can't find ways to stop it. It's slowly killing off our crops to a point where we can't survive. And then you see the dust storms that are, like, killing people, and yeah, it's, like, becomes sort of like a natural hazard.
Like, one thing I found, what I was starting to, like, I'm not saying you interrupted me, I should have thought it through more, but what I was trying to get into before is interesting how essentially this is a world where society is almost going backwards in the way that, big corporations and, big industry is less important. We're dialing it back down to just the simple basics, farming. Yep. And even, like, one little thing, like, how they're at the local, like, ballpark and the New York Yankees are just playing there as, like, a game of, how pretty much nothing that, how, I don't know, I just thought that was really interesting how, because when you think of, like, the future, you always just think of, we're going to keep going up until at some point.
Cars, buildings everywhere, spaceships and shit.
But, like, when you think of, like, once again, I'm no expert on this sort of stuff, but in terms of humans using, outliving the, like, what's the word? Making the world, killing the world, as you'd say, you always imagine it's because industries keep on going up, and I don't know where I'm going with this, so...
Yeah. Well, yeah, it doesn't explain where the blight came from, it just kind of explains what it's doing.
But the thing is, it's the blight's not the point of the movie. The point of the movie is finding a new home, so...
Yeah, blight is kind of what drives the point of the movie, and so it does this nice job where it's like, it makes blight believable in a way that it's like, you can assume where it came from seeing what it's done, and like what it causes to happen. And it's same with, like, the sandstorms. You can assume there's a connection between that and the blight, or you can just assume that's another thing that's just built up over years. And, like, just the way everything's gone, you see everything there, and then there's just little things in the movie throughout the start that just give little hints as to, like, what everything's become, like with the school and not liking the textbooks they're saying that's like the people landed on the moon. Just
how that was, just because how to say that to discourage
people wanting to do that and wanting to stay on Earth to save it. You have that.
How his son had great grades, but he had to be a farmer and all that. But
but the whole like people landing on the moon bit was really clever because it both introduced, like, society's view on that and how they're trying to keep people, farming and trying to save the world like that. But then it also gives you a look into, is it Cooper?
The daughter?
No, the main guy. Yeah, Cooper. Yeah, but Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, his name. No, Murphy was the daughter. Yeah,
Murphy was the daughter. Yeah, so he's Cooper. Yeah, it gives insight to his character.
I haven't seen it in a month or so.
Oh,
bit furry.
Yeah,
just like my webcam.
It gives insight into his character and like what he believes, and that is obviously important to the movie because he's an engineer and an astronaut in the sense, which
But also, the thing I find about I'm sorry to harp back, but one thing I liked about the fact that they didn't go that deep into how it got this way was there's two things that movies tend to do, which can be good or can be bad. Well, wait, here's the thing: if the movie came up with an explanation as to where all this, why we have to leave, and go right into the details, not only would that be kind of not only boring, but sort of, for, let's say, most people who are going to see the movie aren't like scientists, so like me, like I'm, I don't know really any of that stuff. So, but at the same time, if they pretty much make a big deal about how we're ignoring it, like one example I'll use, once again, another movie which sounds like it's written by like a college student is, remember In Time, that Justin Timberlake one?
Yep.
At the very first part of that movie, he says, "We don't remember how it got this way. We don't even care anymore." And then the movie started, which just pissed me off right away, which luckily I'm glad they didn't do that, and I'm glad, I'm not saying I'm glad they didn't explain it that much, but
They did it well from what they chose to do. They chose not to explain it, and they did it in a way that felt like they weren't ignoring it. It felt like they specifically chose to leave it open.
Yeah.
Because it didn't matter enough to, tell you. It's that kind of show not tell idea where it kind of showed you what was happening and it lets you figure out for yourself, because this is the planet we live on. You can make your assumptions as to what you think it is, and they're not wrong because and
but maybe moving on from there, you got to say Matthew McConaughey's got to be one of the best actors working.
He was very good in this movie. He was very good.
Have you seen pretty much everything that guy's been doing the last 2 or 3 years? Has just been
Wall Street.
Hey?
Wolf of Wall
Street. I forgot all about that. I was thinking, True Detective, or obviously, what was it? Dallas Buyers Club. You want
True Detective? I probably should now. Actually, yeah, I might have to watch that.
The thing is, that's a show which people told me before I saw it. People were saying "Listen, this is the best show I've ever seen," and so. It was a good show. It's just I was expecting it to blow my melon, which it's a very good show. I recommend it definitely. Yeah. But anyway, enough about True Detective.
Okay.
Another thing which I noticed when I was looking into this movie is the girl. Well, first of all, the girl that played Murphy, I thought was really good because I find
young Murph or old Murph.
I was meaning when she was young, but because often. A bad kid actor can be like a kiss of death for a movie.
Are you an angel?
Yeah. Whereas she was really good, which, I'm sorry, once again, I'm going to go back to it, but I don't know if you, I know you didn't watch the whole way through. I'm kind of jealous, but, the child actor in Anchorman 2 is probably the worst actor, not just child actor, just actor I've ever seen in my life, full stop. Anyway, back to Murphy. Yep. I thought she was really good, but looking into it, you know who she was, the actress was in? She was the child of Edward and Bella in Twilight, the one which the werewolf wanted to bang. So, that's she's like a little mini McConaughey herself, where he came from.
A kind of comedy actor into a serious thing, right? Twilight's
pretty
comedy,
much.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Because else was that? You had Ben Affleck. Oh no, not Ben. Casey Affleck was in it. He was fine. Yep. Topher Grace, who I can only ever see as Eric Foreman from that '70s show. So once again, he did nothing. Anyway, Michael Caine. Michael Caine he's just lovely.
He's just such a great mentor in every Christopher Nolan film ever. Just wow. If you ever need an inspirational speech in a Nolan movie, you know who's gonna, Yeah. From a white guy. An inspirational speech from a white guy.
Oh, yeah.
Which that's probably one thing to say about this movie. It's not really one thing I noticed while watching it, but looking back and looking through the cast on IMDb and everything, it's a lot of white people in this film.
That really occurred to me. Because I don't see people as colour.
Yeah, I don't see colour. I'm colourblind.
I don't know.
It's just interesting. Like, you know,
there was the black dude who was on the ship with them.
Yeah.
I think he's, you know.
It just comes down to that generic thing. You're like, okay, here's a group of like 4 people, so it's like 2 white guys, a white girl, and a coloured guy. Like, you kind of get that, and it's like,
yeah,
it like to a point where it's so even in how they've decided to distribute it that it feels.
It seems yeah.
Yeah, it seems like obviously done, but then it's yeah. And the main reason I notice that is because, like, I mean, you fucking Tumblr people can call this internalized racism. But I was just like looking through screenshots, and there's the bit of the 2 people at the school, where there's like the white girl, and then there's like the black guy, and I just remember being like, "Oh, why does a black guy look out of place right now?" It's like, wow, there weren't actually that many in the film. So like,
is it ever said where, particularly in America, that this film's set? Because once again, it's not important, but do they ever say it? Like, because there are certain
not
places
that I know of. But that's because I would just forget, because, like, geography, what's that?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
but moving on to something which I've noticed is a lot of people have complaints about how Anne Hathaway's character was, you know, it's not a very weak, or not a very empowering, motivation that she'd go across the galaxy just to find a dude, you know, which I can see, but I remember, like, what I'm about to say, this isn't my idea. I remember hearing Chris Stuckman, a YouTuber, mention this. He said that he people probably wouldn't feel quite the same if she was going to find, like, her father or, like, a sibling, or how about this, if it was another woman, you know. Which, once again, doesn't really, you know. Yeah. Once again, not my idea, just... I don't know.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll talk about that a bit, because these are things that people like to bitch about when it comes to movies, like the color argument, which I'll just quickly finish that off with. It's like,
sure.
It's always in this weird sort of like void between being like too forced, like trying to force like diversity in like gender and color, and then sexuality as well, which and then there's like the other side, which is like you just completely leave it out, and it's like, you know, whitewash or whatever people call it. This movie seemed like it didn't seem to force either side. It, like, from what I got from it, it was just like, these are actors that we like, we'll put them in the movie kind of thing. It wasn't specifically like, don't want too many colored people, but I'll just put one of them here, spot that.
First they'll be in our movies, then they'll be in our neighborhoods.
Oh, that's a horrible thing to say. But yeah, so we'll move on to your thing. Okay, yes. Anne Hathaway was not an empowering enough woman for me, because all she did was fly into space through a black hole on a trip that she might not return from to try and repopulate the entire human race which is dying on Earth. She's not powerful enough for me.
Yeah. I think if you...
Yes, for sarcasm. But
the thing is, if you're offended by something like that, you really just need to grow up, you know, like... Yeah. I don't know. You're probably you're just looking for something to be offended by at that point, but...
Like, I can imagine some people complaining that, like, she is the one who brings up the whole, like, love being some force that we don't comprehend, but we should follow it kind of thing. It's, oh, that's so womanly. But whatever. And it works as her character to kind of drive that whole, like, you know, Disney Frozen, like, love. It's between, you know, these people, and it's between your family, and blah, blah, blah. And then that goes to the whole thing at the end with Cooper and Murph, and it's like, oh my god, she was right the whole time. Like,
it's another thing which another thing, like a common complaint I've heard was that people saying, like, you know, I knew as soon as it was a ghost that it was going to be him in the future. Honestly, that never crossed my mind at all. No. I don't know what that says about me, my intelligence, but
no, like, I usually try and guess that kind of stuff, but I sort of guessed it. I was like, we'll figure this out, or we won't, and if we don't figure it out, I'll think about it afterwards.
I actually thought it was going to be her mother. Like, you know, her mother who...
Yeah, I kind of got that idea as well.
Yeah. But one thing I found was, completely blanked on what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just say, like, Anne Hathaway seemed to bring her point across well. She seemed to be a powerful actor, and it may have been chosen for a woman to bring about that whole like love approach. Mostly because of the way that Cooper sort of rejects it, like the people in the ship just kind of look at it and they reject it as this kind of like, oh, you know, it's just a woman wanting to be with her husband. And it may not have been so easily rejected if it was like, you know, this is stereotype and profiling here, but it's like, you know, a man wanting to see his wife may not have come across this the same way. It still would have been like, oh, you know, you just want to see this person you love, but it wouldn't have exactly been this, you know, woman wants to be with her man kind of thing that they may have like troped in. And so it gives this kind of believability as to why, even when they're on this big desperate mission, that they would so easily reject it.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's another argument for that.
Speaking of Anne Hathaway, I don't understand why every woman or girl, whatever, that I know hates her.
Yeah, I heard a lot of hate for her. And
they always, oh my goodness, I hate her. She sucks. I mean, she was okay in Les Mis, but she sucks. Like, I don't know. I don't have a problem.
Yeah,
but...
I there was a lot of hate for her as Catwoman in Dark Knight Rises that I didn't understand. Like people were just, oh, she was pretty bad in that, but she's alright in other stuff. It's like, what did she do wrong in that? She played it alright. I believed it. Like,
but speaking of Batman though, what's your opinion on, like, prior to this movie of Christopher Nolan? What do you think of his movies? Are you a big fan? Are you a...
I'm very backwards and forwards, so I was never in a point where I'm like, oh my god, Christopher Nolan, because I enjoyed Batman: The Dark Knight because I'm pretty sure that it's impossible to call that a bad movie at this point.
Oh yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of Batman Begins, and Dark Knight Rises is okay. But
Batman Begins is probably my favorite of theirs. Sorry. Anyway, continue.
And I also found Inception to be meh. And I'll explain Inception in comparison to this movie, actually, because they're very similar in that they're this kind of standalone sort of like Inception's science fiction. People are going into dreams and shit. That's like science and shit. But like Inception came across as a movie where like it was a smart movie that thought it was smarter than it was. And so it kind of came across as this like, what's going to happen next? And you're like, I don't know, because this doesn't make sense. Like, whereas this movie came across as a smart movie that was trying to like teach you as it went along. It was trying to it was trying to help you understand what was going on. So it was this kind of like the you know, smart subjects, like looking at different dimensions, time and space and everything. But it would kind of be like, this is what's probably going to happen here, and if that doesn't happen, we'll sort of like explain here's why, and it's quite easy to follow in that way. It doesn't go like, oh shit, why did that happen? Why did suddenly they skip 23 years? Oh my god. It explains it to you before and after in a way that makes sense. So,
yeah. Like, for me with Nolan, I've always been a fan. I've always liked his movies. There was a time when I wasn't quite a fanboy, but I was walking that...
You completed the operation.
Oh yeah, this whole wall behind me was just covered with Nolan's face, and I used to kiss it before I slept, you know. But I don't know. I've always liked his movies. I get what you mean with Inception, but the thing I find with Inception is I find people tend to look into that movie more than there is to look into. If you know what I mean, like the way I see it, I see it as like a heist movie, personally. Like just not a simple heist movie, obviously, but I think a lot of people like go way in, like, oh, what does it mean psychologically? What is the boo? Which I don't know what that was, but like for instance, an example of that I'd find is the last scene. Like, spoiler alert, it was 4 years ago. I think you need to. Is the things people talk about at the end with with the top. Yep. Like I think the thing, like a lot of people are always like, the thing I took away from that when I first watched it and is that he didn't care whether it was a dream or not, because now he's with his kids. Like, that's why he just walked off, didn't see it. Whereas a lot of people keep going into like real good depth, like, it means he is, because look at his hand, look at the bibadoo. Which what I find about this movie, compared to Inception, I find this is a movie where that sort of, I find it's, not only is that sort of not interpretation, but that sort of, what's the word? I don't know, that sort of, how do I put this? The kind of like, that's a good way, the kind of, that you try to, here's the thing, I find with Interstellar, that not only is that kind of, you know, pick it apart, see what's going on thing, it's more in place here because obviously it's more science-based.
Open,
you know, this
beginning and end. Yep.
You know, I'd like going into someone's dreams. No one's done that before. Going into space, people have. You know, but also I find this just, I don't know. The reason I found that also is because this is much more scope. Like there's so much more at stake here. Like in Inception, essentially the plot was we needed, like, obviously there's a subplot with his kids, but it's pretty much this Japanese guy wants more money. Let's get it.
It was a fate of characters. Like the characters were at risk as opposed to like the whole humanity thing. So with this one, like the characters at risk, you weren't so much like, you know, if you're in a situation where like someone's about to die, it's not so much like, oh no, this person's gonna die. It's like, oh, that means like Earth dies. Yeah. That means everyone dies. Like this is so it's not about the self. It's
That's one thing I found about this movie was for the next like 2 days, whenever I watched a movie or watched a show or whatever, all I could think of was, oh, this doesn't really matter. Who cares?
It puts insignificance. So yeah, the drive for this movie is on a really like large scale. Like their mission is very important.
And that's one thing which I really liked about this movie was, like, I remember going through a phase when I was in like year 10, or for anyone, you know, not in New Zealand, that's when I was 14, 15, I remember liking movies which had a big kind of, not only big consequences, but big consequences in our world. So I remember watching, regrettably, stuff like this became because we studied this kind of like mass evacuation and stuff in social studies, but stuff like, do you ever see Deep Impact? Or like, and 2012, which is not, I'm not not too proud about that. But the thing I found with those movies was it only went, you know, after the comet hit or the wave happened or whatever, it wasn't, you know, like it was more focused on how these characters were going to survive as opposed to in this where they're making a solution for the whole human race. So yeah, I liked how it lived up to its scope is pretty much the point that I'm trying to put across with all this. So
right,
I felt it did at least anyway.
Are there any other major things you want to talk about in terms of the storyline? Do we want to start talking about just towards the end?
One thing I found was maybe a little bit forced was, you know, when they go down to the big wave planet and when they come up, it's been 24 years or whatever, and the guy's all old, he has grey hair.
Yep. I
felt that wasn't that necessary to the plot, but I felt like the writers just wanted to show relativity in some way, which
like it's one of those things where like that time jump was, I found it was important in how it related to Earth, where it jumped Murph up.
Oh yeah. Like I said, it was. Yeah.
They didn't want to do this sort of like skipping between it. They wanted to have it feel like it was all in like one stretch where they're all going like that, and then all of a sudden, like, you know, Earth has like done this jump.
Yeah. I never really thought about it that way, but yeah, that makes perfect sense now.
It helped to assist with like Murph skipping to where she was now, and then you get that big emotional scene where it like shows you everything that's happened when he's watching the tapes,
and how she
I might have cried, but
yeah, I was getting misty-eyed at the bits with when he was watching those videos. Hey, Matthew McConaughey, like
it was very good.
It's one of the best like movie cries I've seen, because obviously like whenever people cry in movies, often it's just
that like sort of like
single tear.
Yeah. Whereas this one, it was like actual overcome like emotion, like
he was covering his face on.
Yeah, and
I suppose
that sort of
if he just sat there looking at the screen as a single tear went down, you know, what a loss!
So much emotion.
But
It's one of the things I can always say about this movie. It felt so real for a film about people going into space and traveling through time and into a black hole and shit. Like, because there was such a human element to it. You don't just see them as here's astronaut A and astronaut B like you do with like
Like he.
Well, maybe the bearded guy. Maybe the bearded guy didn't really matter. I mean, who cared about him? But I mean, besides him. Like he was disposable.
I had 2 points I was going to bring up. First one, it's like this movie ruined Gravity for me because not only did it have as good special effects and space effects as Gravity, but I actually cared about the characters. Whereas, like, one of my most regrettable DVD purchases was Gravity because outside of when you see it in the theater, it's this big whoa, look at all. Whereas when you just watch it at home, you see how kind of dumb the whole plot was and how dumb the characters are and how shallow and how you don't give a crap. But whereas this, it's the complete opposite where not only are these big effects happening, but like
this is definitely one of those like cinema movies though. It is like a
it's definitely Like if I was to watch this at home, I'd imagine I'd be focusing more on the human elements than the
loud sounds or lack of. All right. Do we want to finish talking about the plot, or do we want to just quickly talk?
Just one more thing. I had one more point I was going to get across was one bit aspect of the movie which I really liked, just because of how once again how real it was and how understandable it was from both sides was when Cooper made the decision to go. How not only was he conflicted, but he was conflicted, and how upset Murphy was. Like. The fact that not only do you see both sides, but you empathise with both sides. Like, you don't blame her for being upset. You don't blame... Like, once again, we haven't even touched on it, but the score in this movie it's incredible. Like, the scene where he's driving away and she comes running after him and there's that song, dude.
And the lack of score in this film is also amazing. And that's why we can segue... We'll start talking about, like, the music and visual effects and all that stuff. Yeah, they did space very well, in my opinion. The entire setting of it, both like visually and sound-wise. Like they kind of did that whole like Alien thing, where it's like there's no music when they're in space. When, as you said before, there's so much like powerful music going on, like on the ground, and when it skips between it, and suddenly they're back in space, you're like, oh shit, this is eerie because it's just like the sounds of like the ornaments around them on the ship. And that could go back to what we were saying at the very beginning about how this is not science fiction, but rather fiction with science. Yeah. Like something like I don't know, like we said, Star Wars, Star Trek. They would have probably Death Star, Boom, or
like
Matt Damon.
Yeah.
that Matt Damon explosion scene that got me. That was very like. They built him up as like such like a monologuing character, and he starts monologuing as he's opening up the airlock, and there's that quick sound of the explosion, just like the pop, and it's just silent, and there's the explosion going on scene, but it's amazing. That was like,
I love the design of that planet though. That planet which Matt Damon designed.
Ice one, yeah.
Because part of the reason is possibly just because that was a real set,
It
that
reminded me of like Wellington, just like cold
as opposed to. I think we could almost do a whole movie, a review about what's wrong with the Hobbit movies, or I could, but I was just about to delve into but I'll stop. I'll save myself, but yeah, it was really like obviously. It wasn't quite as exciting or as interesting on that wave planet, but then again, it wasn't supposed to be, considering it was supposed to be,
It was supposed to be like, oh shit, this is not what we expected, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, that like visually, the planets were done very well. I like the water planet and how like you look at it, it's this giant ocean, and then they just sort of like step through it, and it's really shallow, and you're like, holy shit, what's going on this planet? Like you don't know because that could mean it's habitable. And then the waves and everything. It's probably worth noting, Legendary Pictures were the company that did the visual effects for this, which just makes me more excited because they're actually doing the visual effects for the Warcraft movie. So they've proven themselves to me, because yes, I'm a huge nerd and a Warcraft fan and everything, except for like the Warcraft universe is just so diverse with its landscapes and everything. Right. It's just like different landscapes and mountains and colors everywhere, and I didn't know if you could pull that off in like an actual like movie, whereas they've shown like they can cover all these different landscapes so well with the water and the ice, and then just like the destruction of Earth and everything. It's just so, yeah.
Or even, you know, like it's obviously it's a big pain and a lot of more expensive and more inconvenient film on location, but it does show. Like, just look at the difference between Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. You know, one feels like a real world, one feels like a video game, whereas which once again, forgot what I was going to say. I don't know, but
oh, we got the water in the background here. Just look at that. Oh.
But there was that one sequence with when around with that bit you were talking about with Matt Damon when it blew up, when Matt McConaughey just had to spin the thing to fit on the other thing.
Yeah, yep.
I forget the details. Once again, I haven't seen it in about a month, but and that's one of the most tense moments I've seen in the last. Yeah.
Even that's one of those like movie cliches, like by the way it's built up that they're going to make it, but it's just like so tense to watch because they drag it out over so long, and like it's very intense. So just like camping, it's intense.
Just one thing I forgot to bring up was on that wave planet, when the big wave comes and the ship's kind of going into the curve and it's a friend of ours named Emmanuel, who I saw this movie with, he as that was going on, he yelled out "Cowabunga," which made me laugh, which
really,
nothing to do with
really
this review.
The tone and everything, yeah. But
I also like the
So we found a new California.
Yeah.
Right, you're gonna say something?
I was, but I realised I didn't have anything to say, so I thought you were gonna pick it up.
Okay. All right. What have we covered? So we've talked mostly about plot.
Well, just one more thing about the visuals is, like we touched on before, this is a lot of these visuals and a lot of these sequences in space. You can tell they were meant to be viewed on the big screen. So if anyone's still listening and hasn't seen it, and that should be incentive enough to go. You're not going to if seeing this on a smaller screen isn't really going to do it justice. Which
no, you need to have your ears blown out by Matt
Yeah.
Damon's just explosive performance. His just really,
but
his really fucking spiky shoes gripping performance into the snow kind of.
But
is that it for the most part? Do we want to talk about the end? We'll talk about the end a little.
That's another thing I liked was harping back to Inception and how a lot of that was left, people left the ending to interpretation. I don't know if it was intentional, probably not, but the fact that I really like the fact that they wrapped it up at the end.
Yeah.
Whereas people were saying, did she make it? Was the guy there? Whereas, and I liked, one thing which didn't bother me at the time, but in going back seemed a little odd, was when they're on that last space station, which reminded me of Elysium.
Reminded me of a Coke can, but okay.
Where and you have Murphy, and she's old as fart now, and then McConaughey walks in, and pretty much they just talk like, "Hey, how you doing? Yeah, how you doing? Yeah, why don't you go get a ship and take off?" Okay, it's someone who hasn't seen his daughter for, well, at least in his time, 2 years. You'd think they'd want to, for her time, lifetime. I don't know. You'd think that they'd want to talk more than, "Yeah, how you doing?" So, which once again, it's a minor thing. It's a minor thing, which it doesn't ruin the movie or anything like that. It's just a little thing I noticed. Whereas, but I don't know. I like the fact that it's implied that he's going to go. Yeah. Which I like.
No. The power of editing.
That killed the momentum. Anyway.
All right.
So to wrap it up, I suppose we wrap up Interstellar at this point. I liked it. I think I wouldn't say it's. I'd say it's one of the best movies of the year. Like, to be fair, there hasn't been a whole lot that I'd say is.
Lego Movie was pretty good.
Lego Movie was pretty good. I thought Guardians of the Galaxy was pretty good as well.
Yep. I can enjoy the Marvel movies, but they never come across as those movie of the year.
I can't enjoy.
Like, they feel like filler content between like.
I can't really enjoy Marvel anymore. It seems like it's the same. It's just the same. Like,
yeah,
I can tell you, Avengers 2. I can tell you it's going to happen. They're gonna have a breakup. Someone's gonna have some witty dialogue at each other, mostly from Iron Man. But then they're gonna have to learn to get together while Iron Man's going. Literally, that's the dialogue. Quote me on that. I don't know. Whereas with Guardians of the Galaxy, it was a much more light-hearted, humorous thing, but it didn't take itself as seriously. It didn't want you to take it as seriously as.
Yeah, it had fun, and that's kind of what superhero movies should do. But we're not reviewing that movie.
And it doesn't help that I won't say all because I haven't seen Captain America 2, but I didn't really like. Iron Man 3
was awful.
It was okay, but the flaws in it make it seem a lot worse than it was. And Thor 2 was.
Child actors, etc., etc.
So, the thing I found most with that was mostly the bajillion Iron Man suits that come at the end and pretty much render Tony Stark himself useless. Why doesn't he just sit on his couch, have a beer while he uses the remote control to do his dirty work? I don't know.
We'll
Thor
talk about
2,
that another time.
Thor 2 was almost bad, but then what's-her-face from that chick from that show? What's her name? Two Broke Girls, mate. I tell you what.
I'll hit you.
Save that movie from the ashes, I tell you.
Oh yeah, totally. But this is probably stuff to talk about another time.
Yeah, we're rambling. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I guess we'll finish off Interstellar here. Like, if you haven't seen it, you should see it, even though you've probably had a lot of stuff spoiled for it. If you enjoyed it, or if you've seen it and you didn't enjoy it, or you disagree, agree, whatever with anything we've said, we would like to hear what you say. So, if this is the YouTube version, comment. If it's not, feel free to yell at me in real life or something. I don't care. I'm not gonna be all like, comment, subscribe, and shit. But I will use this opportunity to promote. Comment because it's easy for us to see. Subscribe
do what you want, but do it.
You talk right now because I'm interrupting you.
I was just hollering, hooting.
Hollering, hooting. Okay.
Like Puff Daddy used to do with Biggie.
Yeah.
You ever listen to an old Biggie song, Biggie Smalls? You will hear Puff Daddy in the background going, "Okay, all right."
Okay, but yeah, I'll say that. You use the YouTube features or whatever for the reason they're meant for, and not for promoting shit. Because really having 4 extra likes on a video isn't going to do anything for us. But it'd be nice to know people like it. Whoa. Okay.
And also, this is the very first time we've ever done anything like this.
Feedback would be very appreciated. If you think it's too long, because we're kind of going no time limit on this.
We're starting right at the bottom here. We only way to go up is really
to here. So we're at the bottom. And later we'll be here. So we start at the bottom. Later we'll be here. Okay.
I think we're talking to our audience like they're 5 years old at this point. So I think we should move on to Interstellar.
Okay. Move on to Interstellar.
No, sorry, into Nightcrawler. My bad.
Go. Now do I have to talk to you like you're 5 years old? Okay, so the movie
yes, sir.
Talking about.
Yes, Daddy.
Sam, please listen to me. Sam, are you listening to me, Sam? Sam, I'm trying to help you.
Up yours, Dad.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We'll move on to Nightcrawler now. So we are now no longer in spoiler territory. Wow, the background changed. Look at that.
It looks like he's
spitting on him.
He's very. I was gonna say he looks like he's upset and his tears are floating into
Nah, he's spitting on him. I kind of chose the positions of a lot of these for some reason. I was like, I want to be a little bit there. Yeah, spit.
Anyway,
just put that logo to good use.
So, Nightcrawler is the directorial debut of sorry, what was his name?
Dan Gilroy.
Dan Gilroy, who, like we said, had written in a lot of movies, but
Born Legacy, Real Steel.
This movie, it's essentially the the plot in a nutshell is Jake Gyllenhaal plays a guy who takes candid, video of stuff like.
Well, he's a thief with certain interests. He's trying to find a job, and then he finds a specific liking for like recording things for the news. And he's like, oh, I can do this like as a job, and he's trying to make a living out of that. That's basically the main setup for the story. Again, I went into this movie knowing nothing about it, except there's something about crime. I was like, Nightcrawler, is this about that, that X-Men character? No, it's not. About crime. Oh, is he a detective or something? Oh no, maybe he's not. Maybe he's a little twisted himself. Maybe he's a bit of a crook.
But I knew all I knew about this movie was that it was apparently pretty good, and that Jake Gyllenhaal was really good, and both of those were true. I thought this is probably the front runner for my favorite movie of the year.
I can see that.
Which, the amazing thing about this movie is, I can't remember. I think it had I'll check quickly, but it had a budget of $8.5 million, which how gorgeous this movie looks, just in terms of cinematography and how it's shot. It's, I don't know. I thought that was really surprising that it was that small of a production. But two movies which come to mind if I had to compare it to anything would be, one would be Taxi Driver, that kind of lone guy, kind of a weirdo, kind of not right, making his way, and two would be American Psycho.
Yep.
In the sense that, well, first of all, the character.
It's a character study. It's a character study.
It's a character, yeah, and it's also just like American Psycho. If the lead actor wasn't as good as he was, you'd imagine the whole rest of the bit would kind of fall apart. But luckily, Jake Gyllenhaal, he's fantastic in this movie. Like, I've been a pretty big Jake Gyllenhaal fan for a while now, since Source Code, Enemy, which came out this year. I don't know if you saw that.
I have not.
Yeah, it was. I think it was once again pretty under the radar kind of movie, which he was once again really good. And I think
I really liked him in Love and Other Drugs, a movie I saw on an airplane, but I didn't get to see the last half hour until 2 years later because I couldn't be bothered. And then I was on another plane. I was like, oh shit, I can see this. And I actually quite liked him in that movie, even though it's a movie about the invention of Viagra. Okay.
Really?
Sort of. It's like a subplot.
Yeah. Because, I just think, I remember seeing, I didn't actually read the article, I only saw the headline of the article, but Grantland did a article on, I think the title was Jake Gyllenhaal, why he stopped trying to be like a movie star to be an actor, which, I don't know. I took from that this guy's, just a real dedicated to his craft, and it really shows. But the movie, third movie, which I forgot to mention, which if I had to say it was most like this, I'd say it would almost be like Drive, the Ryan Gosling, Nicholas Winding Refn movie, which obviously, I'm not saying it is the same. If you like that, you would like this, but yeah, I really like this movie.
It's kind of like if you like any of the styles of those movies, like American Psycho, it's like more of a black comedy. Did you know that? It's more of a black comedy than a film.
Sorry, that was an inside joke.
Inside joke. This goes along it's this kind of character study of someone who's maybe not a little quite right sort of thing. But yeah, that we both seem to recommend seeing it. It's not exactly one of those movies you have to see in cinema because it is about the characters rather than about the environment and everything. Though it does still look really nice on the big screen because the cinematography is great. And the colors.
One thing which as much as the main characters and the character study element of American Psycho is similar to this, unlike American Psycho, this is it does feel very real. It's very gritty, very You never, as much as the main character is, very animated, it's never crosses the line into Hey, it's wacky Jake Gyllenhaal. Hey, but it was a very. I'm going to go on a tangent. Gee, I won't go on that tangent because I could just say it in one sentence. It just seemed like I've been to Los Angeles once, so obviously I'm no expert on the place, but it seemed like more like the Los Angeles that I saw as opposed to the Los Angeles that you see in movies. You know, just a very real, not gritty, not dirty, but just real,
like it doesn't have to be dirty. It doesn't have to be sparkly. It's just kind of it's just
like one thing. Real. Like one thing, like if anyone's hasn't picked up on our accents yet, we're from New Zealand, and I find a lot of people, a lot of New Zealanders that go to Los Angeles, they come home like, oh, it was just a big city. Like seriously, I think a lot of people from where we are imagine that it's just a city full of just movie stars and palm trees, whereas who knew that a city of however many million people actually has people that aren't glamorous, which. Also, a thing about this movie, a big thing is, like, I'm not spoiling anything, but it goes more in depth into the behind the scenes, the politics, and the kind of the way that news works.
Yeah.
In a sense,
yeah.
like stuff like there's so much stuff in here which even I just found interesting just outside of a movie. Like, oh, so I don't know how much. Once again, I don't know much about news production, but if I'd imagine
a bit of insight and like. Like, you can't say for sure whether that's how it goes or not, but you can. It makes sense because of how the movie portrays everything, which is very real. So you can see everything happening like that in real life. It doesn't feel like, you know, an exaggeration of how like corrupt media is or something. It's very real as to what's going on, and it's But we'll into the spoiler theory area here.
So
and so we'll move on to the spoiler zone. So if you're leaving now.
Thanks for watching.
Leave feedback, yell at me in real life, etc., etc. Okay. So we are in spoiler zone. I should probably get like a pop-up for that or something, like spoiler zone, and have like one of those like fenced areas you have as a kid, like the square fence, and you sort of put the baby in it, and you're like, don't leave. You're in the spoiler zone right now.
Yeah. There's some sort of Archer joke in here, danger zone, but it's nah.
Oh no.
Anyway, I just loved how. Oh, one thing we didn't even mention in the thing was I was surprised just how. One part of this movie which I liked was just the chemistry that there was between Jake Gyllenhaal's character and his like assistant. In the way you have one guy who, like the way I saw Jake Gyllenhaal's character, I don't know if it was written this way, other people see it the other way. Good on you. Just the way I saw it was that he didn't see people as people. He saw people as a means to his own ends. Which, you know, a sociopath, is, you know, and it's just as opposed to someone who, as next to just a regular guy, who, you know, what shocked me was apparently the guy who played his assistant was actually British, which I never would have picked that up. He just seemed, but so props to him.
Like genuine, yeah.
But one thing that I liked was. I thought it was going to be a flaw when I first saw it, but it obviously wasn't. It was obviously the way that he gets his footage, like pretty much so he goes to places where there's, you know, as the newswoman put it, where urban crime creeps into the suburbs. So things where there's like shootings or car crashes or. So pretty much he gets the footage from there, takes it to the news people, gets money. But obviously the lines of ethics and, you know, even just morals in general get blurred. Where even just at the beginning bits where he moved the I was gonna say when he moved the pictures to be closer to the gunshots.
Right, yeah.
I remember thinking like, even just the fact he was in someone's house just randomly, I was thinking like they wouldn't like when he takes this to the news, they're just gonna tell him to, you know, bugger off. But like the woman said, who once again was really good. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, the actress, but
I'll find it. Keep talking.
But as she said, like, you know, this is going to get a lot of views, so it's worth the fine, sort of thing. So even, you know, as much as he bends the, you know, the rules and ethics and stuff, it's very much two-way thing. Which I feel like I've been talking for too long.
Okay, I'll start talking about what you started with about like how you interpreted his character, especially in relation to the assistant, because what I found is like the way his character came across is his character is the result of like information and like study and lists and everything that we've devised in books and internet without like empathy and emotion. So he was very like, oh no, I did studies, I read some courses online, and I know that like this is true. And,
or like at the very end, after his partner got shot, and he said, I can't put my trust in a untrustworthy person.
Yeah, it's this kind of like, and then like we were talking before, like he moved the pictures on the fridge, and then later moves like a body, like a dead body. Because it's just kind of like, oh, they're the same thing. It's a picture, it's a body, whatever. They're all just ornaments, because I know how the shot's supposed to work, and this will enhance the shot. So yeah, it is working towards like his own personal gain, but it's not so much in this like kind of greedy. It's like, oh, this will make me more money thing. It's just kind of a like, I'm starting a business. I know how to start a business. I have to do.
Yeah, I didn't mean in terms of money. Like, obviously, the fact that you see where the guy lives and how little possessions he has, I don't think really money's that important to him. Whereas even just the way when he tried to, score a root from his, boss. Sorry to put it bluntly, but the way he's like, he pretty much says stuff like, I desire human interaction. Like, what are you, a Vulcan? What are you like?
Yeah, and is that just because he read that that's what humans do? Like, it's this whole thing. And like, the weird thing about the movie is that as you're watching it and the way he talks to people, like his assistant or like the news lady, I have it here.
You really need to learn her name. She was really good.
Oh my god, it's got them really weird on IMDb. But when he's talking,
her name. Okay, the character's name is Nina, and the actress's name Renee Russo.
Okay, Renee Russo, and so Nina. Yeah, so like when talking to them, I feel like there's one other person, but like he's manipulating them in such like a by the books way. Like it's so obvious that what he's doing is like wrong, and he's just talking to him. He's like, oh, I think this, blah 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 blah. I want this from you. You do this for me, blah blah blah. And the thing is, like, it works, and that's so much of what the movie's showing. Like, even though as we're watching it, we're like, oh my god, this is so fucked up, and everything they do at the news with, like, broadcasting all these horrible things, and we're just like, this is so fucked up. But, in the way he gets away with everything.
It's almost showing of, like, you could almost say it's I've never thought about it until right now, but how being human or having empathy can hold you back. Which I know it's not a healthy thought to have, because it's certainly not, but like
it could be shown that the way that we've built, society, and the way like you climb up jobs, and especially the way like the news network works and everything, is like you can do that. Everything's been sorted into like a list of priorities, and like you can just follow that list perfectly to actually get it, because he climbs up, he gets very successful, he just gets what he wants.
But
another scene that's very notable is when he's watching the TV in his apartment, and it's like some kind of sitcom or comedy show or something, and he just does that laugh as he's watching it.
Yeah.
It's just
so robotic.
Laughter. It's just sitcom laughter. He's just like like he's like, I am meant to laugh at this. So it's that kind of thing. It's like, I recognize that as a joke. I will laugh. Kind of,
It's just like, and if played by anyone like wrong, that could just come across as just goofy. Like, I don't know, like Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory.
Whoa, Bizoip Boy, Zimbabwe.
Bojangles. Anyway, so but like I said, Jake Gyllenhaal, he plays it to an absolute T, and one minor thing
as well, like.
Oh yeah.
He contorts his face just throughout the whole film to this kind of like weird, like wide-eyed sort of like.
And it's just like there's just a natural tension with that performance as well, and the way that you always feel like he's just on the edge. He's just about to snap. He does only really like one time.
There's that one photo with the mirror scene that was so American Psycho. Like he looked like Christian Bale from American Psycho. I'll see if I can find that, because it's so like it was so shocking to see his character like that.
Do you like Huey Lewis in the news? Yeah, but man, like even just the way he described things, like when he talked about just anything, like how about business and how. I can't remember. He said, "I've read an online course about so and so that says that just the robotic way that he blurted out information." I know it was a lot like Patrick Bateman when he had those rants, when he had those little things about songs, like, you know, I found their earlier stuff was a little too new wave, but their new album has new wave, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Which, so yeah, once again, yeah, it's really just a really great performance, and I will say the way that, like we said, cinematography, the way it's shot is so. It's just the way that it builds tension is once again. There we go.
Rah, just like that's so like American Psycho, Christian Bale.
Yeah.
Put that up.
Trying to get reservation at Dorsia now. Yeah, but what was I gonna say though? Oh yeah, as I said in the Interstellar review, that scene I said was like that was one of the most tense scenes I've seen all year. I think the most tense scene I've seen all year would have to go to that end chase scene, which once again, 8.5 million budget. That was more tense than any, I don't know, Michael Bay Transformers thing you'd ever see, which, I don't know, but it's just shot really, like, the same way, like, that's another thing which I think it has to do with Drive, is the way that it's shot is just as big a part of it as the story.
Yeah, like, it definitely really appealed to night shots, because everything about the move really exaggerated, like, black colors on top of, like, orange and yellow. So it's like kind of just like dark sky and like street lights and car lights kind of thing, and everything just came across as really shiny, in the light, like just like everything, like the cars, the camera lens, and everything. And like you look in the background behind us at the moment, and you have like the background of the news scene, which is like, you know, it's a static image that they use for the news, but that's kind of like all those colors is what the movie actually looks like. So they kind of did a good job using that, which is something I just noticed now. But
like another thing I just noticed now is in that scene, I remember him saying, on TV it looks so real, which that could be said the same thing about these news stories that they put up, you know, on TV it looks one way where as it actually happened. Oh, hello. But
yep.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. It's a pretty good impersonation
but
of him there.
yeah. Like, one thing you definitely can say is that the city itself is... It's a cliche, but it is like its own character. The personality that you kind of get from... Like you said, the way the scenes are shot in daytime, it's almost like we said about when New Zealanders go to LA. It's all sunny and shiny and, you know, all like, hey, man, California, dude, you know.
Yeah.
At night time, not so much. But I love the way that... just that whole third act of the movie was just so. It was just so good, you know, like just everything you like. Cause the thing is, despite him being a creepy weirdo, you are kind of on his side the whole time. Like you want.
And it's that kind of like protagonist syndrome where it's like you know the movie's about him, so you root for them, even though you're like, oh.
But that third act is really the first time that you really start to think, wow, this guy's really messed up, you know? Like, the fact that he ambushed his own friend, or his friend, the fact that he sent those cops into that restaurant where there were innocent people minding their own business, as opposed to stuff he did before, like, it was wrong, but it wasn't, you know, it didn't cross that line yet. Even when he took the brakes out of what's his face, Bill Paxton's car,
You still felt like he was in the right because the guy was a dick, like
yeah, pretty much.
It's that kind of like, he's a dick, whatever. Like
one minor thing. I'm probably almost definitely I'm not the first person to notice this, but did you ever see the movie Twister with Bill Paxton? Pretty much in that movie, he played like a newsman, Bill Paxton. This is who's kind of under. He doesn't have as much financial backing. He's kind of raggedy, kind of. Meanwhile, his rival is this big guy with all this technology, all this backing, all this finance. I know it was nice to see Bill Paxton go full circle to being the news guy that has more. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, I like
Yep.
Which.
All right.
But another tense scene. Which, once again, the fact is the one where he goes into that house to take the shots of
the dead people, yep.
Yeah, my goodness. That was just unpleasant. And it's just the fact that
It's just funny how the movie pulls the same thing that the news pulled with the baby crib. Like, when he's in the house, it doesn't show you, it just shows you him filming it, and then it finally shows you during the news bit. I was like, oh shit, they're doing exactly what... Yeah.
I was just like that chick in the scene. I was... Yeah. Oh, yeah. Even just the fact that he didn't even blink when he saw, you know, as a person whose face just got shot off, you know?
Yeah. But one thing that's weird with that is that he actually ran off at the end. Like, as I recall, like, is that just him being like, oh shit, the police will nearly be here, I have to leave, kind of thing? Because, like, I mean, you could look into that, because that was also when there was that body that was alive. So, it's that kind of, like, is it distorting, like, the difference between a dead person as, like, an ornament for his filming, and then, like, an alive person, where it's like, oh shit. Like, because it's then that he runs off, so... But then he uses the live person as, like, you know, oh, I was just in there checking if anyone is alive to help and everything. Which is also weird that didn't come up, but he must have died by the time the police got there. Because you'd think, like, oh, what? But this person was actually alive the time you were in there, so you didn't notice that, even though you're checking for people being alive.
I never really thought about that.
Yeah, that's something interesting.
Another minor thing I noticed was, you know, the scene where they cut to that story, where they cut to it being live, and they're all, we're getting reports, and the director, she's like just in her ear, like, mention the dhamana, repeat the blah blah blah. Yeah. Dude, if I was, that would just throw me off if I was ever a news person. If I'm starting to say something and hear someone, yeah. But anyway, minor thing, but once again, even that was just, it was just interesting. Like, forget about the movie. I thought it was just interesting because, you know, I don't...
Some, like, background sort of insight into all that?
I don't know how true that is, but, you know.
Yeah, like,
and how,
you can't say it for all news networks, but they did, like, kind of express that they are, like, below ratings, and so they kind of have to do, like, what they can, especially with her being in, like, Nina's, like, job position. So, they're really, like, desperate, so it is that kind of, like, scum of news networks kind of thing. Like, they have to take low blows.
And there's also a nice parallel between the
Nina and her assistant, as well as the main character and his assistant.
No, I was going to say between just Jake and it was Louis Bloom. That was the character's name.
Oh, right, yeah.
And the director, just the fact that, you know,
okay,
neither of them, like, both of them just will do what it takes to get what they want, but obviously one does it legally, one does it semi. Actually, no.
It's more like even the news emotional attachment, be it to, like, her career. It is fueled by emotion. The other one is just fueled by, like, this is what I do. Like, you
also get the fact that he has nothing to lose as well, which you know,
which is why he comes out on top in the end, really.
Which is another thing. Which, if they tried, like we mentioned in the Interstellar thing, if they tried to explain his backstory or anything like that, just nah.
Yeah, that's why movies just do such a good job of just introducing the character through the actions. You know, show not tell. Like,
yeah,
you don't have to know. Like, he pretty much says the only thing he says about his past is that he didn't have a formal education, and like the way he has his voice inflection is you'd assume like he didn't exactly have a huge like schooling education, and so he's kind of like self-taught.
Which, if they had a scene where someone says, "So where are you from?" Well, I spent then my parents died.
Yeah.
Which.
But like, okay, the thing I was bringing up is like there's a lot of parallels, and so there's the parallel between it's like Louis, Bloom, whatever, and Nina. Like, while they're like similar characters, you also have Nina's like assistant, that guy in the news network, who's kind of like the moral support, but then he also just keeps getting rejected from like everything he says. And then you also have
which character was this?
There was that male. He was always like sort of like suit and tie, and like the news network is like, you can't show this kind of thing. It's like,
yeah.
Went to the house.
Yeah.
Whereas that's kind of like the whole, like, you know, angel on the shoulder kind of thing, where it was very like tiny and then dismissed. And then you have Bloom's assistant, and like he's also like the moral side of him. Though it's weird that like Bloom's like morality in his assistant comes from a person who's, I mean, I don't mean this in like an insulting way, but he's kind of like, you know, low life. Like, he's homeless.
He's kind of a loser, you know.
Yeah, he's just kind of like he doesn't really have much to show, but like you know, he's a human, and so his morality comes from him just knowing people, and that's a whole difference. So you get that contrast between someone being like so educated and professional, but like no like morality and emotion, whereas there's some person who's pretty much like all he's got is like morality and emotion, but even his morality starts to fade as he, you know, contends with Bloom for like a pay rise and everything. So you see that influence coming through, and then you also see less of the news guy as the assistant towards the end as well. So you can see he probably starts to give up as time progresses because he knows he can't have any influence. So it's just more of that, like, these bad guys who are essentially just like following a list of priorities and how to get what they want come out on top in the way that the movie shows it.
Yeah, it's a very good character study all through, you know.
Yeah, so it's definitely worth it, and I'll probably watch it again. Like once it comes out on DVD or, you know, the internet.
This is another this is another movie where I'd imagine if you saw it at home for the first time, obviously, you know, it's I don't even want to mention this. It's just, I guess, because we just talked about Interstellar.
Yep.
It kind of came up, but yeah, it's very, like, I'm certainly going to be buying it. You know, definitely going to be buying it. I love the movie. Like, because here's the thing. Often I find when I go to a movie, I usually have a positive thing about it because I just saw it. I usually have to wait a couple of days before it sinks in. This still, you know, it's sunk in, and I'm still kind of writing it. So
yeah. I will talk about one thing, because I saw this with a few people, and I've also talked to some other people, like, just about their general thoughts on the movie. And most people's opinions, like, to summarize it, is that, like, they felt the movie was lacking something, is a way they describe it. Like, they felt it was missing something. Do you think that just stems from the fact that it's a very, like, unsatisfying ending, and it's, like, the whole character study thing, where it's not exactly, like, you know, there's a climactic, like, moment, and then it just, like, closes up? Where it's, like, a very open ending that isn't, like, it's not like a sequel bait ending. It's just, like, you know...
Well, then again,
kind of thing.
This is also a type of movie where it didn't really need the loose ends to really be tied up.
No.
Just you know, just.
It's kind of just like a section of this character's life, and it doesn't need to go any further, or like ahead or behind. It just kind of does that bit, and it gives you a lot of interesting insight into different characters throughout it. Because that's really what a character study is. A character study doesn't need to focus on having this very intricate plot and like characters, and it doesn't really even need to have a character, you know, be better as become better as a person throughout it. Like, if anything, he becomes worse as a person. Like,
yeah. So, because I remember you telling me that when we first had the idea about doing this as a podcast, I remember we said pretty much, don't talk about anything in the movie, but did you like it? And I remember you said, I liked it, but others didn't, which, I don't know. I'm not saying that if you don't like this movie, you're wrong, because I'd never say that about anything, but...
No, but it's clearly, like, different tastes, and I think it is more for those people who like movies like American Psycho, who like ones that it's just following a character. Where, Because
that's one thing which, once again, unrelated, but when I kind of mentioned it in what I define as a fanboy is, like, there's two traits. You know, you could have one, two, both, whatever. One is you no longer, like, okay, here's the thing. If you're a fan of something, it means, you know, you like it, whatever. If you're a geek of something, it means you love it, sort of thing. But if you're a fanboy, I find one, you blindly support, you no longer see the flaws in it, or you ignore the flaws in it, and if someone else doesn't like it, you see it as a fault in them, as opposed to, you know, like, which I don't know what it has to do with anything, but
well,
I guess I was just summing up what I was saying before. Like,
you're welcome to disagree with us on anything. Like, these are all just opinions from what we're talking about.
That's the beauty of just art in general. You know, whether it be a movie, a video game, a TV show. You know, there is no right or wrong opinion. You know,
and that's why we've sort of agreed between each other that we're not going to give movies ratings. Like, we don't want to give them number ratings, like out of 5 stars, 10 stars, a percentage or anything. because we find like a reflection or a review in a movie should be more based on a person reading other people's like expressed opinions, like written out or in video form, just kind of like considering them and then just weighing their own opinions against it, and then just coming to whether it's a difference or you've learnt more, you've considered different options, you've looked at different views, and it just gives you more insight to something. And that's really what we're aiming for. We're not giving like we give our little recommendations and summaries because we still believe people should see these movies, and like that can draw some interest to us between like our friends and a viewer base of any kind or whatever. But like we really just want to talk about our opinions, have a discussion between us. We'll probably like bring other guests onto like the podcast other times. We don't really have any plans for the next ones. We just want to see how this goes before we start to sort out other things.
Yeah.
You can
like,
expect it to be more
right now we're just doing it for fun. So it's no sort of, which...
But we don't want to have like us, because we have a lot of similar tastes in movies, being that we both like these movies and we can agree along a lot of the same things. So we'll try and bring some people who have quite different opinions on movies, and to try and prompt more discussions. But like, I mean, we've had like 2 hours worth of talking. It's like an hour and a half so far or something.
Good grief.
Yeah. So like, yeah, we will need to sort out a format, but we are definitely coming to the end now. Like, what I'm saying right now, actually. But yeah, so like we will try and get some different opinions on it. We're going to try and watch some different movies. Like, it's probably not always going to be movies in theaters, and not always going to be movies. We'll just find things to talk about.
You can have,
I imagine we'll disagree at some point, and that'll be interesting.
Yeah, so if we're not going to do every movie that comes out. We're not going to do only movies that come out in the movies. We might talk about, like we mentioned before, how I said I could go on about how I don't like the Hobbit trilogy.
It could be worth. I mean, the third one is out. I haven't seen it yet, but we could.
But neither have I, so I don't want to say overall that. But
no, but we could have a little look at those.
Right, good idea. Yeah, sorry, I didn't pick up what you were saying there, but which it's just we'll see where it goes from here. But if anyone here, everyone, thanks for watching.
Yeah, thank you if you actually managed to watch through all this, or if you skip to the end, you're a scumbag. Since we're no longer doing Nightcrawler, go back to our nice movie cinema chairs and get rid of the screaming Christian Bale and. Right, yeah. Oh, that's the template. Oh shit. They're leaking. Okay, so we'll get into that. Yeah, you can go first.
But yeah, back into like we said, we're not going to give any ratings because I don't want to. Yeah, they had nothing. That was
you don't want to condense an hour and a half worth of opinions into 2 numbers. That's a way of saying it, because that's not how it works. I give it 9 out of 11. Disaster.
The way I see movie ratings, or just is movies aren't like a mathematical thing, as I see it. X plus Y equals Z, like which
that's wrong. But sure.
I don't know how I'd put it into words, but in a way, I see that as a rating as saying this is a 7 movie. This movie is worth 7. Which
this movie is worth 7. I spent $14 on this movie. It was worth 7/10 of that.
But So, like I said, so you'd recommend both movies?
I would recommend both. I'd specifically recommend Interstellar as a movie to see in theaters, and I'd recommend Nightcrawler as a movie to just see at some point. Like you don't have to see it in cinemas. I understand that going to the movies isn't the thing for everyone. Some people just want to download on the internet or buy it when it comes out on DVD and stuff. But I would say that that they're both worth your time, but Interstellar is one of those ones that's like worth your money for the spectacle, because that's the appeal of theaters with like the existence of such like large televisions in homes nowadays and everything, and how you can just get stuff for free on the internet if you're like a pirate. But
because the thing is, going to the movies, it's not about, it's obviously not about...
It's not just about seeing the thing, it's about having the whole environment of the big screen and everything that, like, congrats to you, like, Hugh Morrison, if you have a TV like that in your house. But, yeah.
Might want to edit that out a little bit, but don't really want to drop names out of, but...
It's all in jest.
Yeah. But, I guess we're wrapping it up now, so yeah, thanks for watching.
Thank you.
like it and comment if you want. I don't want to tell you what to do, but
no, but feedback would be greatly.
Any feedback would be very appreciated.
We do want to make this like we're making it for people to watch, so it'd be nice if people who watch it tell us what's wrong with it, what's good,
and for our own enjoyment. So
and people to watch, listen to. We'll look at like getting audio up on SoundCloud, but for them we'll just put this one up on YouTube. We'll see what happens. And
all right.
Say we put it up, you're all looking at it as it's on YouTube, so that's really weird. Hello, Harrison in the past. Hi.
Wait, is this streaming right now?
It's not streaming right now. I'm recording it.
Ah, okay.
I'm saying when it gets uploaded to YouTube, and I wave to myself right now, hello, future Harrison, then I can wave at myself later on when I'm looking at it, and I can feel lonely because I'm waving at myself, and that's.
We really are rambling, so...
We are rambling.
Alright,
okay.
bye-bye.
Goodbye.
End of video.